I thought it would be useful for people outside of Canada to maybe get a better sense of the political climate up here in the Great White North. Unfortunately, because by its very nature, politics is very volatile, I won't be going over current events and the current political situation of Canada. Instead, I will run through a very watered down and brief overview of Canada's 5 current political parties. I will try to do my best to be objective despite my own personal biases. I will briefly outline each of the party's principles, and then I will give my opinion on them afterwards. That way you get a mix of both, which I think is the most honest way of doing this. I'll begin with the 2 smallest parties, and then I'll move into the one party that is kind of medium-sized, and finally move on to the 2 parties that actually are capable of winning majority within Canada's Parliament. I'll begin with the Green Party of Canada. They're a relatively small party, but over the last couple of elections, they've slowly gained some political power. They've slowly gained a couple of seats. By their name, obviously, they're very focused on environmental activism. Outside of environmental activism, they're very socialist and also very progressive. If you go to their website and take a look at Elizabeth May's profile, who is their leader, one of her main points of contention is she wants to fight for social justice. So that should probably tell you a lot about her and the Green Party in general. They are definitely a very tiny party and they almost don't matter, but they're definitely slowly growing in power. I would say over each election cycle they've gained a couple of seats, so they aren't irrelevant, and in the future they could definitely gain some sort of more established political base. Moving on to the Bloc Québécois. This party is possibly the most difficult to explain to someone outside of Canada. The Bloc Québécois, my French is terrible, they only run in the province of Quebec. And essentially their goal is Quebec separatism. Their goal was, and to some extent still is, to have Quebec break away and be a completely separate country from Canada. In fact, in 1995, there was a referendum, I believe on October 30th, where Quebec essentially voted, all of the Quebecers voted on if they wanted to remain in Canada or not. The vote was incredibly close. 50.6% wanted to stay in Canada, while 49.4% wanted to leave. So just by a hair's breadth, Quebec remained in Canada. Unfortunately for the Bloc Québécois, ever since then, the Quebec separatism movement has really, really died. And at the moment, they're a fading party that doesn't really have too much power. They're currently bigger than the Green Party, but I would suspect in a couple of elections that will definitely change. Their leader is, again, terrible with French, so I apologize for anyone that's French-speaking. Martine Ouellette, I believe her name is, and I don't know much about her since the Bloc Québécois is all in French, and unfortunately, again, she's leader of kind of a fading party. Moving on to one of the bigger parties, the NDP, or the New Democratic Party. They aren't as big as the Conservatives or the Liberals, but unlike the Green Party and unlike the Bloc Québécois, they do gain a pretty healthy amount of seats within Parliament, generally in the election. In past elections, when things were less unstable, you essentially voted for one of the 3. You would either vote for the NDP, who were basically farther left socialists, and then you would vote either that, or you could vote for the Liberals, who were kind of center-left, or you could vote for the Conservatives, which are kind of center-right. Unfortunately, in today's political climate, the Liberals have, of course, really gone crazy left, and the NDP have also shifted even further left. So that neither of them are really sane options. As for the NDP's leader, Jagmeet Singh, he is a Sikh man who is dedicated to also fighting social justice, for social justice, obviously, as well as inequality, which, again, should give you a lot of impressions about the party's goals. But I will give the NDP credit. They are not as bad as, say, the Labour Party and Jeremy Corbyn. I would describe the NDP as socialists, not full-on communists. As for their power structure right now, it's really hard to say. They've always had a pretty consistent base where they get a decent amount of seats, but this election I predict, is going to be absolutely insane. So it's really impossible to predict. Although I will say, I think it's likely that there'll be quite a bit of split between the Liberals, the quote-unquote Liberal Party, and the NDP Party. They've always kind of competed, which has generally helped the Conservatives because the parties kind of split the quote-unquote leftist voter base, but who knows with this upcoming election. Speaking of the Liberal Party, we currently have Mr. Justin Trudeau as our Prime Minister, and he is the leader of the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party currently holds a majority. Now, I obviously have several misgivings about Mr. Trudeau and his beliefs, and I'm sure several people listening to this do as well. But I will give Justin Trudeau credit. I can at least somewhat respect the guy. He's not as insane as plenty of leftists. He does seem to have some restraint when it comes to issues of immigration, although when it comes to feminism, yeah, he's completely off the deep end in that regard, unfortunately. As for the rest of the Liberal Party, it's pretty standard Democrat, leftist stuff. They're liberals in name only, unfortunately. They are progressives. They are totally on board with, quote-unquote, eliminating inequalities in society from the social justice warrior agenda lens. But they're our current Prime Minister, and I have to at least give them some respect for that. As far as their current power, it is really impossible to say at this point. Justin Trudeau has taken a massive hit, along with the Liberal parties, to his credibility and his polling ever since he got into office, essentially. Of course, that's normal, but he's taken like a really big hit over the past couple of years. But unfortunately, nobody else is doing much better. When I'll get to the Conservative Party, I will be upfront and honest. I think the Conservative Party is probably Canada's best chance for staying a free, Western, classically liberal, with some social safety nets kind of country, if you know what I mean. Unfortunately, the Conservative Party is kind of a mess. The main problem with the Conservative Party right now is a problem that a lot of right-wing parties are facing. They don't know what they stand for anymore, and they're completely kind of floundering. The Conservative Party is really terrified of the mainstream media right now, which I don't think they should be. I think they way overblow it, because frankly, the mainstream media is dying off and losing its credibility quite rapidly. But for some reason, the Conservatives are still absolutely terrified of contradicting anything that the average social justice warrior or feminist spouts because of what the mainstream media will think. And frankly, it's absolutely crippling the party, because if the Conservatives don't stand for anything, I mean, they're not offering a viable alternative to social justice and leftist movements. Regardless of what you think of him, Donald Trump is an opposite. He is a viable alternative to that kind of insane leftist, social constructivist, Marxist dogma. But the Conservatives are just not doing it. And we have Andrew Scheer, who is the leader of the Conservative Party. I will be upfront and honest, he was not my first choice for the leader of the Conservatives, but he's who we have, and he has to beat Justin Trudeau now. And he is no Donald Trump. He's running into the same problem that Gary Johnson did. I mean, early Gary Johnson, before he completely went off the deep end. Where whenever Andrew Scheer debates with a leftist or a feminist or a social justice warrior, he just completely folds on anything to do with race and sexism and all of that crap. He just completely shuts down and is like, yeah, I agree, 100%, kind of timidly, and just kind of ignores it. At least that's my impression. I want to give the guy a chance, and I 100% I do support him because he's our only alternative at the moment, but look, he's just... I don't see the fire. I don't see him really trying to fight, and I can extend that criticism to the rest of the Conservative Party in general. I mean, recently, of course, we had Bill C-16, which was, of course, the glorified Islamophobia law, essentially. And I heard almost nothing from the Conservatives opposing it. I even contacted my MP, who... my current member of parliament where I live, who I vote for. I literally wrote him a letter and was like, what are you guys going to do about this? And because he's a good guy, he wrote back like, I understand your concern, but the rest of the Conservative Party is just, we just don't know what we're doing. We're kind of in trouble here. So, if the Conservatives want to win this upcoming election, they need to, pardon my language, they need to pull their heads out of their asses and get going. They need to establish their principles. They need to reestablish their why they need to exist, and they need to stop worrying about what their enemies think. Frankly, they need to stop worrying what their political opponents think, because I hate to break it to you, the mainstream media is going to flay you alive regardless of what you guys do. There is no appeasing them. So why are you even bothering to try? But I'm just some guy on the internet, so I doubt they'll listen to me, but it's definitely an issue the Conservatives need to sort out. I hope you guys did enjoy this video, and I appreciate any kind of constructive criticism you guys can give me. And I truly do appreciate you watching, and thank you very much. Have a nice day.